Welcome back. So this video is going to be a little bit different than the last several set of videos. If you watched the last video, you know that we ended season 1 where we dropped the motorcycle off in Albania, and it was a 4-month trip where we started in the UK, went up through Ireland, made our way over to the Netherlands, Germany, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, Croatia, Albania. I'm missing some, I know it. It was a 20-country tour. It took about 4 months, and we ended that one. So I've gotten a couple questions of, and it's always the inevitable, Steve, how do you do this? How do you afford it? And from an afford perspective, everybody has their own ways of doing things. There's a ton of long-term travelers, overlanders, whatever you want to call it, and we all have our own way of funding our trips, right? You could just be from a wealthy family, right? If you're a Rothschild or you're an Astor or, one of those people, good for you, you can afford it. If you hit the lottery, way to go. You can afford it as well. Some of us have just done savings. Some of us work on the road. Some of us, are able to make YouTube work and social media work for them. So how you afford it, it's really up to you. But I thought what we could do is talk about how much it costs, because then you can figure out if it's something that you could afford. So I wanted to go through what it cost me for the last 4 months of my trip through kind of Western and Eastern Europe. Before we jump in, I wanted to talk about what I've excluded from my analysis. So the way I was thinking about it is from the date of the start of the trip to the end. And so what I took out were kind of my personal transportation costs, right? I was an American, I started in the UK, I had to get myself and my bike from the US to the UK to start the trip. So I excluded those costs just because I didn't think that, if you are in Europe and you're already here, you don't incur those costs, or if you are, let's say, in North America and you're gonna go to South America, that might be different. All right, there's no shipping costs, or vice versa. If you're European or somebody from another continent and you're gonna fly your motorcycle to the US or South America or to Australia, wherever, those costs are all gonna be different, and they're all gonna be unique. So I took those out. The other costs I took out were the storage costs in Albania. Right, this kind of ended the trip in season 1 in Albania, so I didn't include those costs. I also excluded my medical insurance. As an American, I have to have third-party medical insurance. If you're European, I think you have your reciprocity in the countries, or even if you're a Commonwealth country, I think you have reciprocity in European countries. So those are going to be a little bit unique. So I took those costs out because as an American, we get charged a little bit more because of our healthcare system is incredibly expensive. So I didn't include that. The other thing I excluded were any kind of pre-expense trips. And those are, I shipped a couple boxes back home because I packed too much, right? And I thought I had pared it down, and everybody says, you packed too much. And I did, and I couldn't fit it on the bike when I got to the UK. So I had to ship a couple things back home. The other thing I've excluded are some of my kind of prep costs. Those costs being like waterproof gloves. I didn't have any. I thought I might need those, especially when I started out in the UK and was going up to Scotland and those kind of places, and I thought, better have that. A disc lock, in case I'm not near my motorcycle at all times, especially overnight. I thought it'd be nice to have a little bit more protection. Some of the other things I've excluded are additional prep costs, like getting the motorcycle from Florida up to New York. I bought more storage or SD cards. I bought extra batteries for the GoPros and things like that. So just all kind of the prep fees. So really where I started out was day 1 when I landed in the UK and I had the motorcycle. I mean, I didn't include the dock fees either. So with that, let's get into what it cost me. So the first thing you'll see is I paid almost $5,400 US in accommodation. In order to keep the cost down, I would camp a little bit, about half the time, and stay in guest houses and those kind of things when I was in Western Europe. Hotel rooms and those kind of things can get to $250 a night, especially when you're considering the exchange rates from pounds to USD and at the time euro to USD. So I tried to keep my costs in control a little bit, and so therefore I would camp a little bit. I camped about half the time. Once I got to Eastern Europe, I think once I hit Estonia and kind of came south, I don't think I've camped yet. So my costs for accommodation are split about 50-50 between Western Europe and Eastern Europe, but predominantly it was because Western Europe is more expensive, Eastern Europe is cheaper, but I stayed more times in rooms. So with that, about $5,400 in accommodation for that whole time. The next thing you'll see is that I spent about $2,000 on fuel. I traveled a lot. I think I was 13,000 kilometers. I went through a lot of places, and not only did I go to the countries, like when you look at my trip from Estonia, I started in Tallinn, went all the way to the Russian border, and came all the way back. Same thing with a lot of other countries. You can see I went to Hungary. I kind of went all the way around it. So I'm really here to explore the countries, not just step foot in them. So with that, I probably spent a little bit more on fuel than some other people might have. Also, I travel pretty regularly. I will generally travel every day, and then after 4 or 5 days, I'll maybe spend 2 days at a place. So with that, I'm traveling a lot and I'm moving. So with that, I did spend $2,000 on fuel. The next expense I had was about $1,800 because I wrecked the bike. What you guys didn't see, because I lost the files, when I was in Riga, right outside of Riga, I crashed the bike. And when it happened is I was going down a dirt road and my back tire slipped and the whole bike fell over. There was one rock, and that one rock went through my valve case, and I dumped all the oil on the ground, which means I had to get rescued and get the bike towed back into Riga. I had to obviously pay the BMW dealer to get it fixed and spend an extra 3 or 4 days in an Airbnb. So I spent about $1,800 just for that mistake. My next expense was motorcycle insurance. It's about $1,700 for the entire time. And I think what Europeans call, it's called green card insurance. And I think at one point it was actually printed on a green card, although I don't believe it is any longer. Just emailed to me. But with that was my insurance for the motorcycle. I think most of Europe requires it, although as I went into additional countries, I think the only other country I had that required it was Albania and Kosovo. They required additional insurance. So with that, $17 for motorcycle insurance for the time as well. My next expense down is about $1,400, and I'm calling this transportation costs. And really what it is, it's ferries. I spent $800 for a ferry to go from England to the Netherlands. I spent another $200 to go from Stockholm to Turku. I spent another $300 for other ferries. I think in total I was on 6 or 7 different ferries. And so the ferry costs got expensive, especially one of them being $800. The most expensive one was the trip from England to the Netherlands, almost $800. Because not only did it include the ferry, to put the bike on it, but it also included a room. So that's why it was so expensive. My next cost was about $1,400, and I am going to put this as just restaurants. So whenever I classified my costs, if I sat down at a restaurant or I picked something up, piece of pizza or something like that at a restaurant, I classified as restaurant or dining. And that's what these costs are. So I spent about $1,300, $1,400 in restaurants. Some of the meals were quite expensive, You saw the one in Denmark where I had the Midnight Shooting Star, I think was what it's called. It looked incredible, and it was incredible. And a lot of those dinners included wine as well. So some of those dinners did get a little bit pricey. And then if I did stop at a pizza joint, it was usually one such, so that was usually pretty cheap. So about $14, $13, somewhere in that range. I think I had $13.49 for restaurants. That's what I spent just on eating out. The next cost for me is another $13 on grocery stores. I love groceries. I love grocery stores. I love markets. To me, it's how the local people live, If you go to a country, go to a city, and you eat in restaurants every day, and generally eat in westernized restaurants, you don't really get the flavor of the country. Whereas I think markets are some of the coolest places to go because you see what people are eating. And if you see a large display of something, that store's not going to allocate space for it unless it moves a lot of product. And so therefore, I tend to buy those things. So with that, I spent about $1,300 in grocery stores, try to eat healthy. I like to snack a lot. I'm more of a snacker or a grazer. And also I would get bottles of wine here. So I think that's where it started to add up a little bit. Not that I'm spending a lot of money on wine, but that's where so with that said, I spent almost $2,600 on food over 4 months between restaurants and grocery stores. The next cost you'll see, I spent about $300 on coffee. I love coffee. I carry a ton of coffee with me. If I'm at a Starbucks and I see the V packets, I buy 4 or 5 packets of them, meaning the boxes of them that have 10 in them or 12 of them at a time. I love coffee, and if not, I will then go buy the little Nescafe things. But with that said, this is my Starbucks coffee. This is stopping at a coffee shop. Like when we did the fika in Sweden, those kind of places, or even if I just stop for coffee at a rest stop or a gas station, those all classify as coffee. So those are my little coffee breaks and making sure I had coffee every morning. So spent about $3 on coffee. The rest of the costs are pretty small. You can see the rest in here. I spent about $126 on laundry. That really is one time, for the most part, it really is about one time where I had to do an hotel. I couldn't find a laundry place. And so I ended up having to do an hotel, which was quite expensive. The rest of the times are a few euros here and there for a laundry machine, or a little bit more at a laundromat, or taken to a laundry service. So a little bit of money for laundry service, but not much. It's a pretty small amount. So one of my last costs is I spent about $200 on sightseeing. These are places like the Guinness factory tour, the whiskey tour that I did in Ireland, a couple castles that I went to, that kind of thing. So a couple $100 on sightseeing trips. I definitely thought it was worth it. I thought the whiskey tour was really cool. I thought the Guinness factory tour was really cool in some of those places. So spent a couple $100 on that. So as you can count the numbers and add it up, I'll add it up for you. We spent about $15,600 for the trip, so about 4 months. Could I have done it cheaper? Absolutely. And I thought about how I could possibly do it cheaper. And I thought I'd give you a little bit of insight of how much I spent, right? We've done that. But then also how somebody might do it cheaper. The first one is gas, right? I moved a lot. Instead of being a Nomad, right? I could have been a Slowmad. And it's me going, right, 200 kilometers every day. I could have gotten to a location, spent 2, 3, 4 days there, and then gone to the next location a couple 100 kilometers away, spend 3, 4 days there as well, move much slower. You're not gonna spend as much gas. And so that where I could have saved a little bit of money. The other place I could have saved money is I could have gone to the grocery store more often. I spent almost $1,300 in restaurants. I could have saved some money by going to the grocery store more often, or getting a pizza slice, or a small thing at a sandwich or something like that at a gas station or a small restaurant. I did eat out a little bit. And so could have saved money there? Yeah, probably. The other place I probably could have saved money is I could have camped more, especially as I got to Eastern Europe. And I probably could have even wild camped more. When I was in Western Europe, I didn't do any wild camping. I'm not good at it. Not that I'm not comfortable doing it, I'm not really comfortable finding it. I don't know how. And so therefore, I never did it. I did camping, but not wild camping. And even camping costs money, right? Sometimes, a couple times it cost me up to 20 euros at some of the fancy schmancy places. And so therefore, I could have, 1, wild camped, and 2, I could have camped more as I went into Eastern Europe. But I just stayed in guest houses and Airbnb. So if I wanted to save some money, I could have saved money by camping more often. I carry my camping gear with me as a just in case, although I'm never far away from some places to stay. But I do carry it with me just in case. And I probably could have used it and saved some money, but that's where I could have saved. The other thing where I could have saved money, because I spent almost $1,400 on it, is ferries, right? Where I decided to go, which was kind of all the way up to Scotland. I took a big ferry to the Netherlands, and then I decided to go up into the Nordic region, up into Denmark, Sweden, Finland, and that takes a lot of ferries, and then come back down into mainland Europe, into Estonia, and again, that's another ferry. So I took a lot of ferries. They added up. I could have saved money by coming into Europe and staying within Europe. right? And not going up through the UK, not going up into some of the Nordic countries and then having to come back through ferries. I could have just stayed in mainland Europe and not had those ferry costs. So that alone would have saved me $1,500. So could have saved there. The last place I thought I could save money is not wreck the bike, right? That was another, I don't know, $1,300 or something. So if I wouldn't have wrecked the bike, I wouldn't have been rescued. I wouldn't have had an extra 3 nights in Riga, in a hotel, waiting for the bike to get fixed, and I wouldn't have had to pay to get the bike fixed. So that alone would have saved me $1,500. So I think there's 5 points where I could have saved significant money on my trip. The first one is don't wreck the motorcycle, right? That alone was like $1,500 to get towed back and to get it repaired and spend extra nights on AirBNBs and all that kind of stuff. So number 1, don't wreck the bike. Number 2, don't take as many ferries. Right? Stay in either A, mainland Europe, or B, go to places that are drivable and not require ferries and those kind of things. So if you're in South America or you're in mainland Europe or those kind of places, probably a little bit easier than to not take ferries than where I decided to go. So that would have been another significant savings. Another significant savings would be to go slower. Right? I was moving at 200 kilometers a day on average. I wanted to see a lot of the countries and I only had 90 days to do it. So I had to move pretty quickly to get through the countries. So instead of being a nomad and moving on a regular basis, you could have been a Slowmad and move much slower. That will save you money. The other thing I can do is number 4 is camp or wild camp more often. If you can actually wild camp, it's free. Whereas even camping can be pretty minimal in cost. And if you can do that and actually do Slowmad, you can actually save some real money. So that was number 4 is to camp more often. And the last thing I could have done was eat from grocery stores more often. Not go to as many restaurants, and especially not go to a couple of the really nice restaurants I went to, and not have wine at those places because those bills did kind of rack up once in a while. Didn't do it a lot, but if I would have eaten more from grocery stores, you obviously save more money because you're not paying for the services, you're not paying for all that, and groceries are generally cheap. So I thought you guys might like to see how much it cost me for my trip, 4 months through Western and Eastern Europe. I didn't analyze how much you could spend. You know, if you want to spend more, you can always spend more. That's easy. But I think we're all trying to, watch our dollars, watch our pounds, watch our euros, watch our pesos, watch our money. And we can find ways to cut costs on our trip. But I thought you guys would like this. Hope you guys liked it. And I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.